CC.
What happened?
Pay up. Pay up.
Let me just say, I have an idea. First of all, I realized 2 seconds ago I have nothing to do with my hands.
Pay
I was
up.
clapping. Listen.
This is the best side job I ever had. Pay up. Give me my $100.
Dear Amazon, I'm getting a box of pens.
Don't
I will
matter
put them
unless they're gonna
under the
attach them to your
table.
leg.
I'm going to put them under
What
the
show was this, Nick?
table.
154.
This is the last time I will ever start the show without a pen.
$100. It's $200 in 2 days.
You bet that I would
Pay up.
forget?
Jenna?
No, he bet on you again. That's why he lost.
I'm the only one in the world got confidence in you.
Give me that money.
Now,
That's
it's costing me money
$200.
having confidence in
This
you.
is never going to happen again. This time,
Okay.
I even
Well, then-
got a warning from Brian, who works with us, who
Then
said,
I'll go
please
broke
remember.
because I'm going to bet against you having the pin every
Monday
day
morning,
the rest of the year.
box of pens under the desk. I'm
Good
ordering
morning,
it.
everybody.
Well, if you're a friend of
Prime
the show, I'm just going to
shipping.
leave this out here. If y'all know Jenna, there's a good chance some of that going to go in the next pocket if we keep this up.
Yeah.
All right, we are richer and we are poorer. Here on First Things First, and what a lovely way to start our Friday morning. TGI this day. Let us begin the show with the reason you can never turn off a Cavs game when they're down 17 points in the fourth quarter, and also when LeBron is on the team. Cavaliers and Wizards, and oh so much LeBron. Cleveland trailing by 17, just over 7 minutes to play. On head coach Ty Lue's first night back from sick leave, LeBron said afterwards he wanted Ty Lue to get the win. So guess what LeBron did? He single-handedly did just that. He scored 13 of his 33 points in the fourth quarter. Cavs win. They've now won 10 of their last 11. After the game, LeBron James talked about his mentality in that fourth quarter.
Well, you know it's time on the clock. So, I don't have a quit bone in me. So if I'm on the floor, I got to try to make plays happen no matter what the score is. And, it's just my mindset.
With the way LeBron was so instrumental in that fourth quarter comeback, what's there left to say about what he's done this season?
Stop point shaving the first 3 quarters. About to give me a heart attack, man. Like, just if you play like that from the jump, we win by 20-something.
It's good to hear Ty Lue back. I'm glad he's got a good sense of humor. CC, how do you think the Cavs are able to pull off this big comeback?
Are we getting tired of saying it?
I mean, it's LeBron.
Now, LeBron, and I like the fact, and I believe it's important, I mean, these just aren't any games. It just isn't any type of comeback because we saw what LeBron was doing, but also his ability to get comfortable with the other players on the court. Kyle Korver missed an extended amount of time. Not only a death in his family by his brother, but also a foot injury. So that kept it. Now, him and LeBron were in sync. So for me, it was not only LeBron. I like to see the other things because I believe the other things are things that can make the Cavs a championship team. Kyle Korver is going to have to be able to hit shots. We know LeBron and Kevin Love, they have trust among each other. But now the emergence of the guy that you had no confidence in the
Jeff
season.
Green.
Okay, so you weren't worried about the team.
No, but I thought Jeff Green was a useless acquisition, and now when you look
He's
at...
been on 7 different teams, right?
Man, and CeCe, I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick.
No.
The advanced numbers tell you the Cavs are 2 different teams somehow with Jeff Green on the court and with Jeff Green off the court. Now he's going to be in the starting lineup for the playoffs. This was one I totally missed on. I thought Jeff Green was not going to be helpful at all. He has been somehow a key contributor. Go ahead.
They got 5 shooters on the court. If they play him at the 4, LeBron at the 3, Love at the 5, the center position. Now, Kevin Love's a little out of position, but what it does is it really spreads the court for the Cavs. LeBron, it allows him to get to the rim as much as he wants. He gets to the rim now more than at any point in his career. And it's not just because of his overall dribbling skills. It's because of the teammates around him and him being comfortable enough. If they do collapse in the lane, he'll dish it to a Kyle Korver or someone else where they'll knock down a 3. But the thing that I think is going to pay dividends is not only him being in the lineup, Green, but his ability to be able to guard some perimeter offensive players that the Cavs had problems with before. Typically, they had LeBron or JR. Those are the only 2 players that they could put on perimeter offensive players. Now they have Green to be able to do that. And you can see a lot like they did with LeBron when Derrick Rose was the MVP late in the game in the fourth quarter in that series, they put LeBron on him. Last night we saw them put Green on him, and I've seen this rotation. So they're doing a couple things besides LeBron James. If I could just talk about some other things, which I believe are just as important as LeBron taking over the fourth quarter, and that's the comfort level of all these guys coming back and playing together. They still haven't played a game, Nick, right?
Still have not played one game with their full playoff roster.
At this point, maybe they shouldn't,
Well,
because they're doing real well just kind of throwing players out there. They've won 10 of 11 without a real starting
But like
five.
Nick said, when they get together, they have to be better. I mean, that's just the normal.
Better than what? They've been pretty
But they
good.
didn't have a point guard last night.
Yes.
And yesterday was a game in 3 parts, 3 acts, I should say. First act, first quarter and a half, Cavs are up 15. The next 2 quarters, the Wizards go on a 58-28 run in there. And then the way the Cavs closed it out once LeBron came on in the fourth quarter. Some context for what happened last night. Going into last night, 463 times this year, a team had been down at least 16 points with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Those teams were 2 and 461.
Wow.
In LeBron's career in that situation, he was 0 and 162. So even by LeBron James standards, what happened last night was unprecedented. To not only have a 17-point fourth quarter comeback, but a 17-point half a fourth quarter comeback. It's not like they were down 17 to start the quarter and then started the comeback there. No, the Wizards had extended the lead to 17 with just under 7 minutes left, and then the Cavs made their comeback. But who they were playing matters last night. Because Michael Jordan famously created grudges, would find reasons to get up for these mid-season games. We have to remember who Washington is, what they said last year. Washington has never played this version of the Cavs in the playoffs. Now, last year, Washington said the Cavs were ducking us. The reason the Cavs didn't fight for the 1 seed is they didn't want to play us
Right. At the
in the
end
playoffs.
of the season, the Cavs had an opportunity. They could have gone for the number 1 seed, but with injuries and lineup switches and everything, they decided they rested some players. They gave up the number 1 seed, which Washington didn't have to say anything, but they added to the rivalry.
And by the way, Washington could have guaranteed the Cavs have to play them by just winning their own playoff series. But they don't win their own playoff series. They chirped. They were scared of us. They didn't want to see us. How did LeBron play the first time they played Washington this year? Oh, he had 57 points. And then yesterday, we're not losing this game. Period, point blank. Now, they could have lost the game. They needed everything to go their way at the end. But once LeBron was inserted in that game, and he either scored or assisted on 8 of their final 9 baskets, where he was running point forward, controlling the entirety of the court, and then at the end of the game, guarding John Wall. By the way, you talked about the Jeff Green being able to guard these guys throughout games. 7 times this year, LeBron has guarded an opposing player in a 1-possession game in the final minute. In those 7 possessions, the opposing team has scored a combined 0 points. So that's a bit of a defensive closer you have when you need to have it. But this game was important. We found out yesterday Kyrie Irving is done for the year. Therefore, the difference between the 3 seed and the 4 seed is you get a hobbled Celtics team if they get there in round 2, or you get a Raptors team that is going to have the best year in franchise history in round 2. If they had lost this game, we'd wake up this morning and they're the 4 seed. That was an important win, and we now go down the list. They snatched Toronto's soul twice in the last couple weeks. Washington, give me that. You saw Scott Brooks having, an emotional meltdown on the sideline as he saw it happening. You said, CC, these Cavs players who are new need to see LeBron do this to guys.
Yes,
and see what happens.
And be a part of it.
Yep.
Chris Mannix yesterday brought up a good point, just that when you look at this team, offensively they're playing great, but defensively they have a few questions. They gave up almost 90 points in the last 3 quarters. Are you worried at all about that, even though you talked about defensive closure? Does that bother you at all, just that they do give up a ton of points?
It doesn't bother me as much is because I've seen them shift gears in the playoffs. I know the style of basketball in the playoffs is different. And it's not as if there's some powerhouse offensive team juggernauts that they're going to be playing against. You have more time to prepare. You have more time in practice. You understand the sets of the other team better. And Cleveland's the only team that I've seen do it. Toronto, we've seen what happened to them. Forget the first 65 games of the season. Let's just go to the last 2 weeks. They have no confidence going against Cleveland. We saw what Washington, the news out of Boston with Kyrie. They're one of the best defensive teams, but they can't score in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, we're not a great defensive team, but it's not like we're going against the 85 Lakers or something out here, like Showtime. So I think they run in together.
Okay.
But also, I've seen the Cavs make that switch and play good defense in the playoffs.
Listen, and they're going to have to be far better defensively in the NBA Finals. And throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs, when you insert Kevin Love as your starting center, you are saying we're going to be at a deficit defensively.
Yes.
We are going to try to outscore you. We are removing all rim protection. Mm-hmm. We are going to try and outscore you. And that's what and by the way, that's why they always they've had a top 5 offense all year long. Now on this run, they've also had a top 20. That ain't that great, but better than 29th defense. They've had the 18th ranked defense in the league. We saw last year, I bring this up a lot, All-Star break to end of year last year, Cleveland Cavaliers, 29th ranked defense in the NBA. Last year in the NBA playoffs, I think the 3rd ranked defense in the playoffs. So there is a switch they can flip to a degree.
There is a switch, but there should be concern, Jenna, because yes, their defense, that will get them through the East. But when you get to the West, you're talking about Houston and Golden State, who are both in the top 10 offensively and defensively. So, yeah, Cleveland, they might be able to get to the finals with the defense they're playing now. But if they were to win a world championship,
it's got to be way better.
Yeah, they'd have to play a lot better.
All right, we'll talk about this more again. But still to come today, Dana White joins us live in studio. Got a lot to talk about with him. We're back with more. First things first. All right, this is fun. We watched this as a staff yesterday. Tiger Woods' Day 1 Masters is in the books. How did Tiger do? I guess it depends on who you ask. He shot a 1 over par, 7 strokes back of the leader, Jordan Spieth. He only birdied 3 holes, and it was his first over par score in nearly 2 months. But Tiger Woods remained positive after his opening round.
I felt great to be back out there again. I've only come up here the last couple of years just to have food. So it's nice to get out here and play and know that I had this golf course in front of me. It was a day that the room was kind of puffing up, changing different directions. I didn't play the par 5s very well today. I played an even par. I played in a major championship again, but also the fact that I got myself back in this tournament. I could have easily let it slip away, and I fought hard to get back in there, and now I'm right back in this championship.
First of all, can I just say that comeback Tiger is far more honest, far more forgiving, far more open, and far more, hey, I'm a humble guy, and I'm just trying to do it. I'm going to do the best I can than the old Tiger that we used to see. CeCe, talk to me. How should Tiger feel about his rounds?
A great observation by you. He really has changed. We talked about it earlier in the week. We would have never seen him play a practice round with Phil Mickelson. Not unless they were in the Ryder Cup and somebody was forcing them. And they were doing it just for the camera. So he is softer. He is more real. He's enjoying being in the tournament. But he realized, though, he could have been out of this tournament after today. And when he hits that drive on number 11 and it goes a fairway over, at that point, which led to a bogey, which really affected him. And the way it affected him was the par 3, number 12. He hits a 9-iron into the water. Now, he said that the wind came up. It fooled him. It puffed him. He didn't make solid contact with it. So that ball goes into the water. So he has to take one of the most dangerous drops, penalty strokes, at Augusta. That's where Jordan Spieth began to crumble on number 12 because you're below. It's the lowest point on the course. And where you have to drop the ball, you have to hit the ball up on the green, and the green is a very, very small and narrow green. So he was able to get it on the fringe and make a bogey compared to making a 5, 6, or 7, what we've seen people make. And then he comes back, he sprays his drive on 13, but somehow he salvaged a par on the par 5. In that stretch, if he doesn't make birdie on 14, he can kiss this tournament bye. He's going to play this afternoon. It's just a matter of just going around the course.
And that was the key, right? In him just keeping it together and salvaging it and not letting it get away from him.
The key was the putt on 12. Because at that point, you got to keep in mind where his mental state is. He's 1 under through 3 holes. Feeling, man, that's just, he birdies a hole at Augusta for the first time.
I have to go a little beyond that because it was a critical putt that he makes there on 12 to get a bogey because that's a great score. But the next drive, he sprays it into the trees on a hole that he's got to get a birdie on.
Absolutely. The point that I'm making is if he doesn't make the putt on 12, and he double bogeys, and he gets to 4 over there, I don't think his drive would have been better on 13. If he goes double bogey and then sprays a drive right on a scoring hole par 5, it's over for him. So the ability to keep it together on 12 enough after going into the water left him the availability to where those 2 birdies he made on 14 and 16 could matter.
Yes.
And now, listen, I said I would like him to shoot a 70. CC said a 69. Obviously, 73 is not what we were talking about. The last Masters champion to win the Masters, tied for 29th or worse after 1 round, which is where he is now, was Tiger in 2005 when he actually shot a 74 on day 1. But we said, CC, he's got to score in the par 5s. If he was 1 over but 3 under on par 5s, I'd be more worried. The fact that he was 1 over, but even on the par 5s, gives me a little more optimism for today and the fact that he was able to salvage his round.
Have you changed your outlook on what you think he can or will do this tournament just based on what you saw yesterday? You did come out yesterday and say Tiger tends to be a little nervous and he gets a little cold on the first day. Was that just jitters, or do you think there's something else?
Part of it's jitters, but playing the course in the morning, the temperature was not as warm as it was in the afternoon, basically 15 degrees different. The ball's going to fly further. That's why you saw guys at the end of the day scoring on that golf course. Now, Tiger's going to have the same opportunity. Now, is the weather consistent? Because as Nick and I talked before, when you get in these majors, you can get a bad window of weather. Now, the sun was out, but it's only 48 degrees. So it's totally different than his afternoon tee time. Is the weather the same where the course is more gettable in the afternoon? The biggest problem is not only Tiger trying to manage getting enough birdies. Man, we got the world's best players playing. I told you someone would shoot 5 under with Jordan Spieth. He went 6 under. So you can't get too far behind because we know on the back nine, yes, you can score. People can shoot a potential 29 or 30 on the back. But, man, the best players are playing their best golf. And there are too many good players between Tiger and the lead in Jordan Spieth. So Tiger's got to be able to cut that down. You can't wait to typical Saturday moving day.
Got to go shoot a 67 or better today.
He's got to play one of his best rounds of golf this season today.
Tees off this morning?
This afternoon.
Awesome. Coming up, got that right. Conor McGregor is in police custody after yesterday's tirade. UFC President Dana White is here to discuss. That's still ahead here on First Things First. You know, if these 2 guys, my co-anchors, were Seinfeld fans, I'd remind them of the great Even Steven episode. You know, lose $20, find $20. Patriots love that episode. Lose a wide receiver, pick up a wide receiver. It's just that easy. You see where I'm going now?
Man, I got that. You got to give me a little warning.
I gave you warning.
Big on the, what's his name?
What's his name?
Seinfeld.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Jerry Seinfeld. All right, on Wednesday, they said goodbye to Brandon Cooks. On Thursday, they said hello to Jordan Matthews. New England signed Matthews to a 1-year deal yesterday. He struggled in Buffalo last season, only catching 25 balls and battling injuries all year. All right, CC. Seinfeld aside, how much will Matthews be able to replace the productivity that Brandon Cooks gave this Patriots team last year?
Well, it's going to be hard to just replace the productivity with a guy who is not necessarily an outside receiver. I mean, who is Jordan Matthews? He can play outside because he's got some height. Not a real speed receiver. I believe he's a possession receiver, and I take that as a possession receiver. I don't take that as a slight. It's what their skill set is. Brandon Cook, one of the fastest wide receivers that we've seen in the NFL as far as a starter, all right? You cannot replace the threat that he has on that offense. So now it makes me think he's a lot like when they acquired Chris Hogan 2 years ago. Now, he'll be playing with the best quarterback in his career, started his career in Philadelphia, and then went on over to Buffalo. Didn't have the productivity there in Buffalo. That's how he ends up in New England. But them also signed him to a 1-year deal. If he doesn't do well in the offseason, doesn't do well in training camp, they could cut him. So this is just a tryout. So before we get consumed with him being on the team, his skill set is he's a possession receiver, a lot like Malcolm Mitchell, who they have, will be back from an injury, a lot like Hogan, who they got from Buffalo, who has been productive, but can play some in the slot. But he won't be able to replace Amendola, his productivity in the slot, or Brandon Cook, what he did outside.
He is a better athlete than most of the Patriot receivers, and I don't say that for what some people would call the obvious reason, but because at the Combine, he was a stud at the Combine.
Yes.
Had more bench press reps than any wide receiver. Ran a sub 4.5 40, had a 36-inch vertical. His measurables were really good at the Combine. That's really, I'm be honest, I know that about him. I know a few. I remember the trade last offseason when Buffalo got off Sammy Watkins. They then bring in Jordan Matthews. But you've known Jordan since before he was in the NFL. A lot of when the Patriots make a move, it's a lot about play, but it's also a lot about personality, intelligence, ability to pick up the offense.
Now, he has all those things.
Just tell us a little bit about Jordan Matthews, the guy.
He has the temperament of a New England player. He's not a diva wide receiver. He's not a high maintenance, very, very bright guy. Played college ball at Vanderbilt. He will fit into the New England way. So he is a guy that Belichick likes to get. He's got a clean resume beside being injured as far as his character and everything off the field. It speaks to New England in the way they do things. And, man, they bring you there on a one-year tryout. Typically, they get the best from you. They like to be able to match some of the productivity that he had playing for Chip Kelly, being a slot receiver, because New England typically doesn't go for a bigger slot receiver, and that's what Jordan would give them. That, to me, I believe, is the change of pace that we could see there in New England.
Does that mean the Patriots are done looking for help at wide receiver? Does he come in and replace Brandon Cooks?
I think, and this is no disrespect Jordan Matthews, I think the fact that he's the first guy they are able to sign shows you what type of help is out there. Like this, the fact that there are no oh wait, well this solves it left. And by the way, I don't think there's that in the draft either. So like it's going to be either a guy who plays better than he had in any other place in his career, or a guy who reclaims something from earlier in his career. It's going to be that type of situation. There are no B-level or higher players left in free agency at this point, not at that position. There's some safeties available, but that's not what they seem to be targeting.
Yeah, it's really hard to replace the speed that Brandon Cook brought to the lineup. So for me, I wouldn't be shocked if they draft a wide receiver. But New England, what are the characteristics of the players they want? They like smart guys. They like guys who have played in the league, have experience, and they're pros. They know how to work within a pro, but also college graduates. Even though these guys are coming out of college, rookies haven't done well in New England's offense. All right, so to get someone like Jordan, that is a bonus compared to relying on someone coming out of this year's draft.
All right, take a break. Coming up, Dana White will join us to let us know what actually happened last night with Conor McGregor. That's ahead on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. Chris Mannix joins us now. Hey, Chris.
What's happening? See you, man.
I'm ready to declare the Celtics season over.
Well, it took someone.
I'm ready.
That's a better declaration than compared to the one you should be saying. Nick Wright is right.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Cece. I like that.
I don't think he means that.
If LeBron went down for the season, I'd be right. So that's see how
that works.
It's semantics. It's semantics, Chris.
Semantics.
All right, let's tell you what these guys are talking about. The Celtics were dealt a blow yesterday when it was reported that their season is over. Well, specifically, they announced Kyrie Irving will miss the rest of the season, including the playoffs, because he needs additional surgery on his knee. So basically, their season is, for all intents and purposes, over. Kyrie only played 60 games for Boston this season, averaged 24 points, 5 assists per. The Celtics currently are sitting at the 2 seed and would play the Wizards if the season ended today, which it doesn't, so it was a throwaway sentence. Chris, what does this mean for the future of the Boston Celtics?
Oh, look, short term, it means their season is over. I mean, if they play Washington, they're not beating Washington in the first round. It's as simple as that. Long term, you have to start asking some serious questions here. Now, I know the narrative being pushed out by Boston, every time they issue a press release on Kyrie Irving, it includes some form of the sentence, no structural damage in the knee has healed fine. This is about pain management. This is about a bacterial infection, which I never heard, by the way, when it comes to something like this. Great. Could Kyrie Irving come back, be fine next season? Yes. The recovery time puts it right around August. But this is his second major knee surgery in the last 3 years. And Chris, you played the game, man. I don't care how minor some of them are. When you go into that knee, when you're yanking out screws, when you're cutting wires in there, that's serious. So until Kyrie shows he can play 70-plus games in a full playoff after all this has happened, You have to ask questions.
There were people in Cleveland that were disappointed that they got Isaiah Thomas because he was damaged goods. That's why they went back and got compensation after the trade. But the word out of Cleveland that was communicated to me was Kyrie Irving's knee will never be the same after that injury that he had. And I asked you that. You were like, oh, Kyrie's going to come back. I said, aren't you worried about his knee? Because I know the people in Cleveland, long-term, especially for guards, it's hard to have knee problems. It's hard to have a long career when you have problems with your wheels. We have seen it. Guards deteriorate faster. So for me, it's not about the playoffs, okay, because they didn't have Gordon. They weren't going anywhere anyway. But long-term, I'm concerned about that. When they're trying to add that final piece, do they go after a Kawhi? Do they go after the brow? Man, you got to be concerned about Kyrie Irving. As a guard with a knee like that, like, I'm with you. I'm reading through the little details and everything. I would be concerned. If I was a Boston Celtics fan, I believe it's more than just bacteria around the hardware that was placed in the knee. I got hardware in my foot. Just had it x-rayed last month. Guy asked me that I wanted to leave the hardware in there. I said, well, I'm not going to be playing any basketball anytime soon, but having those screws in your knee or in your foot, they are not good long term.
Well, and remember the Joe Varden report from a couple months ago that said if that Kyrie was prepared, if the Cavs didn't trade him, to have knee surgery that would put him out for the year. Now we have
when you were talking about this, you and I told you, Nick, there's some truth to that.
Right.
Because Nick thought he was threatened just to hold him up.
I don't know if it was for the year. I know he was going to have knee surgery before camp and not go to camp. The type of surgery they thought they were doing in Boston, which would tweak some things.
See, so that's where I think there's a slight disagreement, because what I've learned, or what I understand, I should say, through other people's reporting, I haven't been doing the reporting, is that the moment they put those screws in, they told him at some point, we're going to want to take these screws out.
Yes.
And that's a surgery that will knock you out 4 to 5 months. And it seems to me that is the surgery he was, according to Joe Varden's report, threatening. Like, okay, you guys don't move me. I need this surgery at some point anyway. I can do it right now as opposed to after a season. So the upside, the bright side, if you will, if there is one, is he probably needed the surgery at some point anyway. Had he waited until after the season, that delays the rehab further into next season. So that part of it's good. But the negative part, or there's obvious negative parts, but the procedural part of this is we're seeing, like I say it all the time, there's a reason teams don't go to 4 straight finals. There's a reason it is hard to play that many 100-game seasons, that many years in a row.
That intense.
So, guess what? Steph, he's having injury problems this year. Kyrie having injury problems this year. Kevin Love, not necessarily, I mean, he broke his hand, but he also had, I don't want to call them emotional problems, but he had his own issues dealing with stress and things like this. Like, we have seen guys, there is no precedent for what the Cavs and the Warriors have been doing. And for Kyrie, listen, people think I don't like Kyrie. I hope Kyrie's healthy.
All the guys that have been in those 3 series, for the most part, have been hurt. You go to Steph, Clay, Draymond, Tristan,
JR, everybody.
Except LeBron.
So, Chris, let's get back to our original question. What does this mean for the future of the Boston Celtics now?
Well, look,
how do you
have
put it in perspective?
I mean, look, if he's not able to play at the highest of levels, if this continues to be an ongoing problem, they don't have a championship window. Like I wrote last night, their championship window begins next year. It opens up to some degree next season when Hayward's back, when Tatum and Brown are a little bit older. But if Kyrie Irving is dragging that knee around every All-Star break and needs procedures at various points during the season, they don't have a future. The question I would be asking, Nick, in the aftermath of that Joe Varden report, now that we have all kind of the information here, why wasn't surgery done this offseason? If you know that this stuff, like if Joe Varden knows something, shouldn't the Celtics know something? Shouldn't they have this information? If you believe, like you said, Chris, that these screws are coming out, that this wire needs to be cut, why not do it in August as soon as you get him, and then you get him back on the floor December, January? Fair questions I think need to be asked.
Absolutely.
All right, we got to take a break now. Chris, we'll see you a little bit later in the show. Coming up, Dana White joins us to discuss all the chaos surrounding Conor McGregor. That's in 3 minutes, right here on.
I ain't got my fighting clothes on. They better not start throwing stuff, Dana.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by UFC President Dana Dana White. Dana, thanks for
Good to see
stopping
you,
by.
Dana.
Thanks for having me.
You had a
On
pretty
the show, bro.
uneventful night, so we appreciate you just coming over and hanging out with us this
Oh,
morning.
man.
No, it's a pleasure.
Let's talk about it. Some crazy events.
Brooklyn's tough, isn't it?
At UFC 223 Media Day yesterday, Conor McGregor and members of his team showed up unexpectedly and threw multiple objects, including a guardrail, at a bus full of UFC fighters. Conor was charged with 3 counts of assault, 1 count of criminal mischief. 3 fights off the pay-per-view card were canceled as a result. So let's bring it out here. And Dana, I ask you, what have you learned after everything and the dust settled yesterday? What did you find out?
Well, it was obviously a weird situation. The thing was over, and the fighters were all getting on the buses and
To leave.
leaving the
Yeah.
arena and going back to the hotel. And these guys had people on the inside who opened doors for them, who were there covering the event for his company, and came and attacked the buses. And you know, when you see that dolly go through the window.
Man.
Mike Chiesa, one of the fighters, is sitting right there. So the glass and I believe the dolly hit him, you know, and he was bleeding. And then one of the other guys, Ray Borg, glass went in his eyes and actually cut his eyeballs. Yeah. And so he was off the card. So just right there, that's 4 people. And then Artem was with Conor in doing this. And, you know, Conor turned himself in last night to police. They had a warrant for his arrest, or were working on a warrant for his arrest. I don't know if what actually ended up happening, but they did ground his plane. They grabbed his passport.
They did.
So that he couldn't, you know, tagged his passport or however it is they do it. And, you know, it was either wait for the police to catch him or him to turn himself in.
Dana, now when we first saw the report, as sports fans, initially, not alarming, but is this staged? Is this real? Now, much respect to you, Dana. Now, you've been involved in a lot of different things from a promotional standpoint and very, very successful at it. We've never seen anything like this.
Right.
Where does this sit with you last night?
This is the fight business, and leading up the week of a fight, there's tension and animosity. Guys are cutting weight. They're angry. You know, these type of things happen. Guys will say things, push, shove, grab each other. These things have happened. People have slapped each other. People have done this. We can deal with all that stuff. When you bring in, you know, 20 hoodlums, they flew in from Ireland to basically do this at our event. It's, like I said, there's nothing like this that has ever happened.
Conor as well flew in from Ireland.
He flew them in. He's the one.
Flew them all in on a private jet. They all flew in to do this.
So is this? Do you have any idea? Is this out of anger about the scuffle at the hotel? Is this because
Yes.
It's not about being stripped of his belt.
No. It has nothing to do with him being stripped. This was
So what? Tell people.
Artem- some context.
Artem Labov, who is on the undercard, is a very, very close friend of Conor McGregor. And he got into an altercation with Habib Nurmagomedov and his team. So when Conor found out about it, he loaded up a plane full of guys from Ireland, flew over here, and, you know, coordinated this attack on the buses. And obviously, there's multiple problems with doing something like this. But the biggest problem, in my opinion, both of these buses are full of a ton of fighters and they're cornermen. And they're just throwing things into the windows with not caring who they hit. They hit Mike Chiesa. Mike Chiesa has nothing to do with this. You know what I mean? Rose Namajunas was right there. She has nothing to do with this. And many of the other fighters and cornermen have nothing to do with this situation. And they didn't care. They attacked them all.
Have you spoken to Conor? Do you plan to speak to Conor? Have you spoken to his people? Where are you with that?
Conor and I talked through text yesterday. Probably obviously the worst conversation we've ever had. But yeah, we talked yesterday before he turned himself in.
Worst conversation?
Yeah, it was
What do you
bad.
mean that he didn't understand what had happened?
No, I don't believe he did.
Or the
Well,
severity
it's not
of what
that
happened?
it's not that I don't think he understood what happened. It just he justified it. It was justified to him that you know. Listen, I'm sorry about Mike, and I'm sorry about Rose and whoever else might have whatever, but this had to be done.
So when you say this, his issue was with Habib, right?
Right.
he is in one of the only industries in the world where if you have an issue with someone, you not only are you allowed to punch them in the face repeatedly, you
You're
can make
encouraged.
millions of dollars to punch them in the face repeatedly. Like, so I'm not asking you to get in his head, but like, why was there the inability, in your opinion, to just say, okay, now I have real animosity towards a guy, and by the way, you didn't want to strip him of his belt. You'd rather him be fighting anyway.
Yes.
Let's just make, I can maybe show up, I can be in the crowd, I can get the buzz started, and then set up a fight. Like, why not that route, the logical route?
Yeah, that you're asking the same questions that I'm asking, and that's what I said yesterday. If you have a problem with somebody in this business, we can handle it. You can literally fight them and do whatever within the rules of fighting. You can do that, and that's absolutely what should have been done. You're talking about one of the biggest superstars globally in all of sports, and it doesn't get any worse than this.
Does he have a future with you?
I honestly, sitting here right now, people keep asking me, "You're going to fire him? You're going to fire him?" This is way bigger than, "Are you going to fire a guy?" This is criminal. This is other fighters. Some of our staff, one of our security
Broke
guys,
his knuckles?
broken knuckle, was punched repeatedly by guys. These type of. We have the whole footage. We have the footage from the cameras that were shooting UFC embedded, cameras from inside and outside, and the arenas. So we literally have everything.
Dana, I want to go back to something you said. You're seemingly the only person that's spoken to Conor since this has happened. You said he justified it. Did he explain anything to you that you didn't know before or that surprised you at all as to why he did this or why he doesn't think what he did was so awful?
Nothing.
Really?
Nothing. Obviously, we didn't have a good conversation yesterday, and it wasn't really about the situation. He felt that my interview on ESPN yesterday and
MMA Junkie, you did something with that.
Yeah, and the Las Vegas Review-Journal were all there after this thing, and he wasn't happy with my interview and some of the things that I said, and so we got into it more about that than him really. They feel like these guys attacked his friend, and this needed to be done.
When you go ahead, Cecil.
Obviously, the message, you weren't able to get that to Conor McGregor. But Nick, myself, Jenna, we're fans of UFC. We're a fan of Dana White. What kind of message do you have to us and other people here in the New York tri-state area? You have a big event tomorrow night.
Yeah.
What's the message to us as consumers of your product?
Yeah, listen, unfortunately, these things happen in all sports. I mean, there's been huge fights that have spilled out into the crowd in NBA and, soccer, and the list goes on and on. And they obviously caught us at a moment when, first of all, everybody's gone. The fighters are the last to leave. Everybody's getting on the bus. And if you watch the video, the long video, which I'm sure will be out soon, the security staff that we did have there stopped them from throwing bike racks, garbage cans. The list goes on and on. The dolly and a chair, I think, hit the bus. The dolly went through the window, but the limited security staff that was there did a fantastic job. And 15 years, almost 20 years of me doing this, and 25 years of the UFC, nothing like this has ever happened.
Right.
Not in the crowd, not anywhere.
What do you think? And listen, I promise you, we're going to talk about the actual event that's happening, but because I know that's the original reason you came here. It's a huge event tomorrow, even though some of the fights now aren't going to be able to go on.
That you were scheduled to come,
regardless of this, and it's great of you to come anyway. But was the objective to get Khabib off the bus? And if that happens,
no. Him for Conor?
For Conor, I know.
I think the objective was to get to Khabib. Our objective was to keep everybody on the bus and diffuse this thing. And like I said, our limited security staff that was there, 3 or 4 guys, did
hell of a job by them. I mean, because
it's
not just, it's Conor and I would assume a lot of other trained professional fighters.
Right, exactly. But you're talking about trained professional fighters that are in a completely different state of mind. These guys are cutting weight. The weigh-ins are today. So these guys are right in the middle of weight cut. They're tired. They have to get back and keep working on cutting the weight. Completely different state of mind this group of fighters were on that bus.
I just want to follow up one thing you said. You said Conor wasn't happy with something. It was some of the things you said in the interview. I would imagine one of those is you said, you're like, listen, I don't know if he was on drugs. I don't know.
100%. Yeah, that was a big
That's what
that
he
was
was
a big
upset
one,
about.
Yeah. But when you see the guy run in and do what he did, what do you want me to think? What do you want me to think? This is completely irrational behavior. You're a professional athlete. You make millions of dollars a year, and you're one of the biggest superstars on planet Earth.
Millions because of you, though.
Yeah,
Did he forget that?
Millions because of both of us. He is a very talented guy. I have done my job, obviously. He has done his.
Do we know Conor McGregor without Dana White? No. Okay? Let's stop that mess.
Thank you. All right.
Dana, what options do you have right now? What are the choices and decisions you have to make over the course of the next 24, 48 hours
Obviously,
with regards to this?
we're focused right now on the event,
Okay.
security, and all these things as far as the event goes right now. Get this event behind me. Obviously, my whole crew is out here now from Vegas, lawyers and everybody else. We were on conference calls all night last night, and once this thing's over, we get back to Vegas and figure out what's next.
I wonder if he realizes how much trouble he's in. Trouble's seemingly a mundane word, but how severe this is.
I agree with you. I agree. Yesterday, I don't think he did. Today, I think he's in jail right now. He might. And, not just the legal stuff that's going on, criminal stuff that he's being charged with.
The civil part of it.
The civil lawsuits that are coming next. Yeah.
I mean, for anyone and everyone. Listen, I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer on television, but I would imagine the UFC has a claim. Barclays might have a claim. Half dozen fighters. Everyone on the card, even people not injured.
Security.
Security. There's a lot of people. And by the way, sometimes you sue a guy that you know has no money. Sometimes you sue a guy that you know has a ton of money.
Right.
And those results are different. All right. So listen, what's left of the lineup, and then we can talk about the main event. Like you mentioned.
The main event is still intact. The co-main event is still intact, and most of the other fights the big fight, it bummed us out losing Chiesa versus Pettis. It was a good fight. We'll make it up to those guys and put them on a card here soon. But the main event, co-main event, and many of the other fights that people want to see are still on.
So what should people, if people don't know Khabib, if they don't know Max Holloway, what should they be looking for?
Well, Max Holloway is the 145-pound champion. He hasn't lost in 5 years. The guy has the most finishes in the 145-pound division history up against Khabib, who is undefeated, 25-0, who many people feel is the best fighter in the world right now. And Max Holloway is a stud, stepped up and took this fight on 6 days' notice, because this started on Sunday for us, this nutty week that we're having. Our guy Tony Ferguson got hurt, was doing PR and tripped over one of the wires and tore his LCL off the bone doing PR. So people who think PR isn't dangerous, Tony
you
thought
the
proved
UFC
that
was
wrong.
dangerous. Public relations is the worst.
Tell me about the co-main event.
What's that?
Tell us about
the co-main event is Rose Namajunas versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Jędrzejczyk's only loss is to Namajunas, and the first fight was incredible. It was at Madison Square Garden. This is the rematch. Joanna was on her way to break Ronda Rousey's streak for title defenses, and Rose came and ruined that for her.
Is Rose doing okay? She walked back to the hotel, right? She wasn't physically injured, right? But she was shaken by everything.
Apparently the bus was backing up, and when this thing came through, she was right there, and I don't know. I guess glass just exploded into the van, and all of it went right by her face. And these fighters are cutting weight. They're in a real different state of mind. Yeah, she was shaken up. She was upset. She left and walked back to the hotel when everybody told her not to, and I went and sat with her, and I think she's good.
Dana, you've got a lot on your plate. We really appreciate the time today, both with the event coming up, plus everything the fallout from everything you're gonna have to deal with. But you've been wonderful talking to us, and you helped explain a lot. So we thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck with everything.
And the prelims are on FS1.
Yes,
so people can check all that out before the
take a break.
Then you know how we do it. I need two
after this.
on the camera side. So when they paying the fighters, I'm right there. You know how we do business.
Dana.
Done.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.